Alright guys, so I think we are really living in a simulation today. Nothing just makes sense anymore. So the Nord Stream saga keeps getting worse. It has been around 2 years since the pipeline was blown up. We had countries investigating it. Denmark and Sweden, they were all part of the probe. Eventually they dropped the case. And let's not forget Russia is also suing over the Nord Stream blast. But it just gets weirder and weirder. Germany is pursuing the pipeline sabotage and they are after a Ukrainian called Volodymyr Z. I'm not joking, Volodymyr Z. And apparently this is a diving instructor. So you're telling me an instructor suddenly did a James Bond, he dived at least 80 or even 100 meters under the sea and he blew up the Nord Stream pipelines and now he's hiding out in Poland? This is really the ghost of the Baltic Sea. This is just so bizarre. Suddenly, this news comes out of nowhere. Suddenly, Germany wants answers. After all, no one on earth, no soul, really knows who did it, right? But the story gets even weirder. From the Wall Street Journal, a drunken evening, a rented boat, the real story of the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. So I guess Russia really didn't blow up their own assets after all, never would have guessed. According to the piece and their claims, the shoestring operation was funded by private businessmen and overseen by a top general. Zelensky wanted to call it off, but it was too late. And here's how it went. The plotters rented a leisure boat called the Andromeda and sailed through a few pit stops before blowing up the pipeline at two separate locations. It's just very bizarre. It's like a movie. It's like entering the Twilight Zone, but this is the story that's being sold to everyone. I don't even know what to think of it, what to make of it. Now, what's undeniable though are the effects of the Nord Stream shutdown. That one incident basically sealed the fate of the German economy. Cheap Russian gas can no longer flow to Berlin and it's heading to China. That's why we are seeing the divergence of these two economies. Now take a look at this chart. It shows us how significant the pipelines were. Nord Stream 1 and 2 had a combined capacity of 110 billion cubic meters, and that's equivalent to the other pipelines to Turkey and Europe combined. Since 2011, Germany has been getting cheap Russian gas. It helped their economy become the strongest in Europe. Now, the first stop of this gas is Germany, so their industries could take in as much volume as they needed at rock bottom prices. It's basically the Cantillon effect, where people who get the money or commodity in this case first benefits the most. But that advantage is now gone. It has gone to China. The cost of production in Germany has shot through the moon and it's just collapsing their industries. So Germany has to get to the bottom of this. They need to pin the blame because the economy is cratering. The manufacturing base is gone and investors, they are just leaving the country. German investor confidence plunges to the lowest since January, and it makes total sense. If we zoom out, we can see the confidence is on its way down to the 2020 lockdown levels. Energy costs are just too high, and if you manufacture anything in Germany, you'll be at a massive disadvantage. It's no wonder that companies are either moving to the US or they are moving to China. You have much bigger markets there with lower production costs and a ton of subsidies for companies. And it's really sad if you compare this to the past. After the GFC collapse in 2008, every economy was affected. Manufacturing in the US and Germany, they cratered to hell. But Germany's recovery was superb. Production kept rising higher and higher compared to the US. And why do you think that happened? It was because of cheap Russian energy. Full delivery of gas started in late 2012, so billions of cubic meters flooded into Germany and they had first dipped. And that's why the US government, from Trump to Biden to Nuland, they were all against the pipeline. The Germans didn't need to buy expensive LNG for the Americans anymore, and their industry powered ahead of US manufacturing. The problem facing Germany isn't complex. They need cheap energy, we all know that. But it's government policies that's making it impossible. Removing nuclear energy, now that's a clear one. And running to hydrogen is another mistake. And until this puzzle is solved, it's really hard to see Germany rebounding. The IMF has released a study and it tells us how long this gloom and doom will last. And if you're from Germany, you won't like this one bit, but here's the truth of the economic situation. The pain isn't going to go away tomorrow. Germany will continue to suffer a 20% increase in energy prices until 2028. And that's just a conservative estimate. And because production costs are higher, this will impact the potential growth of industries. We'll have at least 5 more years of negative 1%, but for some industries, this will get worse. The hit to output could reach up to 2% or more. There are no good solutions left. The government can subsidize costs, of course, but it will only lead to a bigger national debt. But if they don't, more companies will leave, and this will be the end for stuff made in Germany. And even Habeck, the economy minister, has admitted defeat. The economic crisis is becoming increasingly entrenched at the level of stagnation that frustrates everyone. The measures taken so far aren't sufficient to overcome the structural problems in Germany. So Germany is stuck, and they aren't the only G7 country in trouble. Japan is another, and their economy is on life support. They are hanging on the thread, and the weak yen is helping their exports. But the weaker the yen gets, the worse off people are in Japan. And now Kishida is going to resign. In September, he will be gone. The Japanese people have had enough. And if you think about it, there's been a strange string of curious coincidences. We had Meloni running all the way to Beijing, and then Macron snapped election. Biden left the election race. Sunak in the UK is gone. And now Japan's Prime Minister is saying goodbye. He's saying sayonara. All the failed policies, all the money printing, and all the sanctions, they are coming to a head. It's important to realize that Kishida isn't leaving Japan as a hero, as a dear beloved leader. Less than 20% of people wanted him to stay. And if you lived and worked in Japan, you kind of know why. You had 27 months of declining buying power. From March 2022 to May this year, your monthly real wages were falling at 2% on average. Just look at a big collapse in January last year, down by 4%. And with the yen also collapsing against the dollar, everything is really expensive for locals in Japan. Japan's economic problem is massive. Kishida was never ever going to solve it alone. All the endless money printing, the yield curve control, they have trapped the country in a really bad situation. Over the past week, we saw the yen carry trade blow up. It took down global markets. The Nikkei, they fell by over 10%. The S&P dropped by 5% and Asian stocks got clobbered. But yet, hedge funds today, they are running back to the carry trade. Yen shorts have risen by 40% in the past week. Traders know the BOJ, they can't hike rates without big consequences. So they are all betting it on black again, that the currency continues to fall further. This consequential move tells us that the yen will continue to weaken. To prevent a global market collapse, the BOJ has chosen to sacrifice the future of the Japanese yen. Trapped. That is the word of the day for Japan. The BOJ can't hike rates without imploding everything, so the disparity between the haves and have-nots are just going to escalate. A weaker yen leads to exporters benefiting. Japanese goods gets cheaper so they can sell more stuff. The weaker yen also triggers people to buy back into the stock market, and that's why the Nikkei is recovering from the crash. Half of the losses have been regained, and it's simple to understand why. Investors can't hold a collapsing currency in cash. You'll lose your buying power ultra fast. Japanese government bonds aren't great either. The yields are still near zero, so the only other option is to buy stocks. So exporters are going to win and investors will also win. It's the middle class, the people earning in yen, the people who don't really have assets, they will get hollowed out. Now, as bad as the situation is in Germany or Japan, things in the US, they're just going off the rails. The US might be reviving an economic plan straight from the Soviet Union. And let's pull up this insanity. From Zero Hedge, Kamala's economic plan proposes price controls to fight inflation. This is insane. It's crazy. And it really makes me wonder if Bidenomics was even that bad in the first place. Maybe it's the perfect plan compared to what Kamala is trying to pull. Now, anyone with half a brain cell knows price controls just don't work. And it doesn't even sound smart to begin with, and this is Kamala's economic advisor.
The fact is that prices are not coming down, they're going up. Debt is also rising, that's going up. So why should Americans believe the president and vice president?
Well, there's some prices that are definitely coming down. So there are airfares. Airfares are, hold on. Yes, airfares are lower now than when President Biden took office. So airfares are lower now than they were pre-pandemic.
Energy prices too. I mean, from when the date President Biden came into office to today, the stuff that people need is up.
So the price of gas is down over the past year. Is the price of gas, higher than when the president took office? Sure, that's going to be the case over many presidents because that's a price. It's a global price. It tends to go up over time. I think
this is the same person who doesn't understand how US debt is being issued. The level of confidence isn't very high here. And is she really taking advice from this person? And now we are talking about price controls, and this is why we are doomed towards eternal inflation. We can't really take this economy seriously anymore. Kamala is proposing a ban on price gouging for food and groceries. You better sell at the price that we set or the government is coming for you. Now, I get the anger, I get the worry about inflation, and we all know companies today make a ton of money. But what she's proposing goes against all economic sense. It's from another alternate universe. We are heading back to the Soviet Union days. They did price controls and it did put inflation in straitjacket, but it also created shortages of food and consumer goods, and that resulted in Russia's hyperinflation in the early 90s. Just sit back and really think about this seriously. Price controls are possible, but that would mean a mountain of subsidies. Kamalanomics is possible, but the US federal deficit will fly to the moon. The government will have to issue debt to pay for all these subsidies, and this will eventually boomerang back as higher inflation. Not in food prices, but in everything else. You're talking about housing prices, now that will go up. Fuel prices will also rise, and the dollar will collapse as well. The Federal Reserve will have no choice but to print money. This is a chart of CPI and PPI, but just concentrate on the blue line here. PPI stands for Producer Price Index, and it's the cost paid by businesses. Their input costs have gone up, and in some cases even higher than consumer prices. They are hoping for consumers to stay so that when inflation eventually stabilizes, they can finally make money. Kamala's price controls will destroy these companies. If you want unemployment to rise, this will be your solution, your silver bullet. If you want 5 or 6% unemployment, here you go. You want Walmart to maintain the same prices forever? No problem. They will just slash workers and cut wages so everyone's buying power collapses. And this is the end game of price controls. You either get massive deficits that push America closer towards the default, or massive unemployment when companies eventually start firing everyone. So this economic climate keeps getting weirder and more bizarre. Now, I kind of thought Trump's trade tariffs were bad, but Kamalanomics is even worse.
She's running on the Maduro plan. We call it the Maduro plan, like something straight out of Venezuela or the Soviet Union. This announcement is an admission that her economic policies have totally failed and caused really a catastrophe for our country, and beyond that, a catastrophe in the world.
Now, whether you like Trump or you hate Trump, he kind of has a point. Just look at Venezuela's inflation rate. The Maduro plan, the price controls, just sent everything to the moon. It unleashed massive shortages across the grocery aisle, from 20% inflation to over 160%. And things are just getting crazier. The only way, the best way to stop inflation is for government spending to drop down, to stop, to allocate money better, to increase the supply of goods. Economics 101. Price controls either lead to spiraling debt or massive unemployment. So pick your poison because it's a train wreck either way. But let me know what you think. Will Germany find the ghost of the Baltic Sea? And are price controls coming for the US? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through this crazy times.